The room was silent, screens were glowing, but no one was speaking. In the middle of the control room, a small red light was blinking. That light was not just a signal, it was hope. Far away in space, millions of miles from Earth, a machine was traveling alone. It had no feelings, no fear, no voice. But the people on Earth were afraid for it. This was Perseverance. Perseverance was not just a rover. It was a dream made of metal, wires, and code. A dream sent to a dead planet called Mars. On Earth, scientists were waiting for one thing, a call, a signal, a desperate call from space. The journey had already started months ago. Perseverance left Earth on a powerful rocket. Earth slowly became smaller, then it disappeared. Now there was only darkness. Perseverance was flying through deep space at a very high speed. No human could control it directly. If something went wrong, help would come too late. That was the problem. Mars was far away, so far that a radio signal needed many minutes to travel. When humans talked to Perseverance, it listened late. When Perseverance talked back, humans heard it late. This delay was dangerous. Inside the rover, everything was silent. Its systems were working quietly. Its computers were checking temperature, power, and direction. Every second mattered. On Earth, the team watched the screens. They could only guess what Perseverance was doing right now. They could not see it, they could not touch it, they could only wait. Mars was getting closer. Mars looked beautiful from far away, a red planet floating in darkness, but beauty was hiding danger. Mars had a thin atmosphere. It was full of dust, cold air, and unknown forces. Many missions failed before. Mars was called the graveyard of spacecraft. The scientists knew this. That is why their faces were serious. That is why the room felt heavy. Suddenly, one screen changed. A small line moved. This was it. The desperate call was coming. Perseverance was about to enter the Mars atmosphere. This moment was the most dangerous part of the mission. They called it 7 minutes of terror. 7 minutes where everything could end. When Perseverance touched the atmosphere, it was moving very fast, faster than a bullet. The air started to heat the rover's body. The temperature became extremely high, hotter than fire, but no one on Earth could stop it now. The rover was alone. Inside, Perseverance followed its instructions. It did not panic, it did not think, it just worked. On Earth, the team waited for signals. Each signal told them one small thing: speed, heat, position. Every signal was delayed. If something broke, they would know too late. One engineer closed his eyes, another held her breath. Some were whispering prayers. The desperate call was slow, painfully slow. Then a signal arrived. Perseverance was alive. The heat shield was working. The rover was slowing down, but danger was not over. Mars was still pulling it down with strong gravity. The atmosphere was shaking the rover. Dust and air were hitting it hard. Another signal. Everything was still normal, but then silence. No signal. Seconds felt like hours. Did something fail? Did the heat shield break? Did the rover burn? No one knew. Then finally, a weak signal returned. Perseverance was still fighting. The room did not celebrate, not yet, because the hardest part was still coming. The rover was falling fast, too fast. Something had to slow it down, and it had to happen perfectly. One small mistake could destroy everything. On Earth, the screen showed numbers changing, speed dropping, altitude decreasing. Mars was close now, very close. The desperate call continued. Perseverance was sending its story, one signal at a time, a story of survival, a story of risk. Team listened in silence. They knew one thing: this was not just a machine landing on Mars. This was humanity reaching out into the unknown, and in the next moments they would find out if Perseverance would survive or become another silent memory on the red planet. To be continued. Mars was no longer far away, it was right there. A red world waiting below, cold and silent. Perseverance was falling toward it, fast and alone. No human hands could help now. On Earth, the control room was frozen in time. People were watching numbers change on screens, speed, height, heat, but these numbers were old. What they were seeing already happened minutes ago. That was the cruel truth. Perseverance was already facing its future while humans were watching the past. Inside the rover, everything was automatic. No emotions, no fear, only commands written years before. The atmosphere of Mars became thicker. Air pushed harder against the rover's body. The heat shield burned bright orange. This shield was the rover's armor. Without it, Perseverance would not survive. The temperature was extreme, hot enough to melt metal, but Perseverance kept going. It trusted its design. The rover was shaking now. Mars winds hit it from every direction. The planet was testing it. Was this machine strong enough? On Earth, a woman leaned closer to her screen. She had worked on this mission for 10 years. 10 years for these few minutes. Another engineer whispered, "Stay with us." The rover could not hear him. Suddenly, a new signal arrived. Speed was dropping. That was good news, but not good enough. Perseverance was still moving too fast. Mars' gravity was pulling it down like a giant hand. If the rover hit the ground like this, it would be destroyed. Something had to happen, something risky. High above Mars, Perseverance prepared its next move. The parachute. This parachute was not normal. It was the biggest parachute ever sent to another planet. Strong but dangerous. If it opened too early, it could tear apart. If it opened too late, there would be no time. Perseverance waited for the perfect moment. Inside its computer, a timer counted down. 3, 2, 1. The parachute exploded open. The force was violent. The rover was pulled hard. For a moment, everything shook. On Earth, the screen showed a new message. Parachute deployed. Some people gasped. Some smiled for the first time, but no one celebrated because Mars was not done yet. The rover was slower now, but still falling. The heat shield had done its job. It was time to let it go. A loud command inside the rover activated. The heat shield separated. It fell away into the red dust below. Now, for the first time, Perseverance could see Mars. Cameras looked down, a rocky surface, dust, craters. This was the landing site, but it was not safe. Big rocks were everywhere. If Perseverance landed on one, it could tip over. If it landed wrong, it would never move again. Mars did not forgive mistakes. The rover began to scan the ground. It compared images with a map stored in its memory. Left was dangerous. Right was worse. It needed a safe place. Quickly, every second mattered. On Earth, the control room was silent again. People knew this part was fully automatic. No one could change anything. They could only trust Perseverance. The rover adjusted its path slightly. It moved itself in the air. This was new technology, never used before on Mars. Risky, brave. Mars rushed closer. The parachute had done all it could. Now it was time to leave it behind. The rover cut itself free. For a moment, Perseverance was falling freely. No parachute, no heat shield, only thin air and gravity. Then came the final system. The sky crane. Engines fired below the rover. Flames pointed toward Mars. Dust flew everywhere. Perseverance was hanging in the air, lowered slowly by cables. This moment had never happened before on another planet. One mistake, one broken cable, one engine failure, and everything would end. On Earth, hearts were pounding. The desperate call was almost complete. The rover was just meters above the surface now. Mars waited, silent, cold, watching. Would Perseverance touch down safely or disappear forever into the red dust? The answer was coming. Very soon. Mars was just below now, so close that there was no time left for mistakes. Perseverance was hanging under the sky crane, moving slowly toward the red ground. Dust was flying everywhere. The engines were loud, powerful, and dangerous. This was the most fragile moment. On Earth, no one spoke, not because they had nothing to say, but because words felt useless. Perseverance was on its own. The cables holding the rover were thin, very thin. They were strong, but Mars did not care about strength. Mars only cared about mistakes. Inside the rover, systems were checking everything again and again. Height, speed, balance. The computer was calm. It followed the plan exactly. 5 meters above the surface. 4, 3. The ground looked rough. Sharp rocks, red dust, small hills. This was not a perfect landing place, but there was no other choice now. The sky crane lowered Perseverance gently, slow, careful, then touch. The wheels met Mars. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the cables were cut. The sky crane flew away, crashing far from the rover. Its job was done. Perseverance was alone again, standing on Mars, but Earth did not know yet. The signal was still traveling. In the control room, people stared at their screens. They were waiting for one small message. A single word. Touchdown. Seconds passed, then minutes. Those minutes felt longer than the whole journey. Someone whispered, "Please." Then it came. A signal finally reached Earth. Perseverance had landed safely. For a moment, the room stayed quiet, as if no one believed it. Then everything changed. People smiled, some cried, some laughed, some just sat down, tired and relieved. But Perseverance did not celebrate. It was busy. Landing was not the end. It was only the beginning. The rover stood still, checking itself. Were the wheels fine? Were the cameras safe? Was power stable? Mars was cold, very cold. The air was thin, almost empty. The sky was not blue, it was dusty and orange. Perseverance slowly woke up its systems, one by one. On Earth, scientists waited for the first image. They knew it would not be beautiful, it would be raw, real, Mars as it truly was. The camera opened, a picture was sent. Black and white, dusty, grainy. But it was perfect. This was proof. Humanity had reached Mars again. The rover looked around. The surface was quiet, no wind, no sound. Mars felt empty, but Perseverance was here for a reason. It was not sent just to land, it was sent to search for answers. Long ago, Mars was different. It had water, rivers, lakes, maybe life. Perseverance carried special tools, drills, cameras, instruments, all waiting to be used. But first, it had to move. The rover tested its wheels, slowly turning them. Everything worked. The first movement was careful, a small roll forward. Tracks appeared in the dust, fresh tracks, the first marks of Perseverance on Mars. On Earth, people watched with wide eyes. This was history, but danger was still everywhere. Mars was unpredictable. Dust storms could cover the rover. Cold nights could freeze parts. Sharp rocks could damage wheels. Perseverance had to be smart. Every move mattered. The rover stopped and looked again, scanning the land. Somewhere here, hidden in rocks and soil, was the story of Mars, and maybe the story of life beyond Earth. The rover was ready. It had survived the impossible. It had crossed space. It had beaten Mars' deadly landing. Now it would begin its true mission. And what it would find could change everything humans know about the universe. Mars was silent, but Perseverance had started to listen. To be continued. Perseverance did not sleep. Mars was entering night. The sun slowly disappeared behind the dusty horizon. Light faded, shadows grew long. For the first time, Perseverance was truly alone on Mars. On Earth, night meant rest. On Mars, night meant danger. The temperature began to fall quickly, very quickly. Mars had no thick atmosphere to hold heat. The cold came like a silent attack. Inside the rover, heaters turned on. Energy was used carefully. Every unit of power mattered. Perseverance stood still, listening. Mars was quiet, no wind, no sound, only stillness, but this silence was not peaceful, it was heavy. The rover checked its systems again, power levels were normal, communication was stable, wheels were ready. Still, something felt unknown. On Earth, scientists were watching delayed data. They knew Perseverance was safe for now. But Mars had fooled missions before. The rover raised its camera slowly. It looked at the darkening sky. Mars' sky was strange, not black like space, not blue like Earth. It was dark orange, dusty, cold. Stars appeared one by one. Perseverance recorded everything: images, temperature, radiation. This was the first night data. Suddenly, a small vibration passed through the rover, very small, almost nothing. The computer noticed it. Was it wind? Was it the ground cooling and cracking? Mars did not explain. Perseverance stayed alert. Its wheels were still, but its mind was active. It was built for moments like this. The cold became extreme, colder than any place on Earth. Metal parts contracted, batteries worked harder. This was a test. If something failed now, the mission could end quietly. No explosion, no drama, just silence. On Earth, one scientist checked the thermal data again. Everything was within limits. Still, no one relaxed. The rover waited through the night, hour after hour. Mars rotated slowly under a sky full of stars, a sky never seen by human eyes directly. Perseverance was humanity's eyes now. Near midnight, the rover received a command from Earth. It was old, sent minutes ago: stay safe. The rover followed its program. It lowered power use. It protected its instruments. The night felt endless. Then slowly the horizon began to glow. Morning was coming. The sun returned, weak at first, then brighter. Light touched the rover's body. Dust sparkled. Perseverance had survived its first night, but Mars was not done testing it. As sunlight grew stronger, something changed. The rover's camera picked up movement. Dust, fine red dust, was lifting into the air. A small dust storm was forming, not big, not deadly, but dangerous enough. Dust could cover solar panels. Dust could hide rocks. Dust could damage parts over time. Mars was reminding Perseverance who was in control. The rover took pictures quickly. It measured wind speed. It watched the dust move like smoke. On Earth, scientists received the images. They leaned closer. This was valuable data, but it was also a warning. Mars was alive in its own way. The rover stayed still. It did not move yet. Patience was important. Rushing could be deadly. After some time, the dust settled. The air became clear again. The land looked calm. Perseverance checked its wheels once more. Everything was ready. This was the moment. The rover prepared for its first real drive, not just a test, a true step forward. The computer planned the path: avoid rocks, avoid soft ground. The rover moved slowly. Its wheels rolled over red soil. The ground crunched under pressure. New tracks appeared, fresh, clear. The first journey on Mars had begun. On Earth, people smiled again. This was progress, but Perseverance did not feel proud. It only focused on one thing: the mission. Somewhere ahead, beneath this quiet red surface, were answers. Answers about water, about life, about the past of Mars, and maybe about the future of humans. Perseverance continued forward. Mars watched in silence, and the real story was just beginning. Perseverance stopped. Not because it was tired, but because the ground ahead looked different. The rover was inside Jezero Crater, a place chosen very carefully. Long ago, this place had water. A river once flowed here. A lake once existed. Now it was dry, silent, frozen in time. Perseverance scanned the ground slowly. Its cameras zoomed in. The soil looked hard in some places, soft in others. Mars liked to hide its secrets. On Earth, scientists watched the images. They were not looking for beauty. They were looking for clues: lines in rocks, colors in dust, shapes that did not look random. Something was here. The rover moved closer to a flat rock. It was not big, not special at first look, but looks could lie. This rock was very old, older than any human city, older than history. If Mars ever had life, this rock could remember it. Perseverance stopped in front of it. Now came the risky part, the drill. This drill was special. It was not made to destroy. It was made to collect carefully. One mistake could break it. One wrong move could ruin the sample. On Earth, the team sent commands. They waited. Minutes passed. Perseverance received the message. The arm moved, slow, careful. The drill touched the rock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the drill started. Dust rose gently. Tiny pieces of rock fell away. Mars was being touched by human technology again. The drill went deeper. Inside the rover, sensors watched everything: pressure, heat, resistance. If something felt wrong, the drill would stop. The rover worked silently. No sound traveled in the thin air. On Earth, people held their breath again. This was another first. No rover had done this exact job before. Then suddenly the drill stopped. Was something wrong? Data appeared on screens. The sample was collected. Success. But the story was not over. The rover pulled the drill back. Inside it was a small piece of Mars, safe, sealed. This tiny rock was priceless. It could answer questions humans had asked for centuries. Are we alone? Did life exist beyond Earth? Perseverance stored the sample carefully. It placed it inside a special tube. This tube was not just storage. It was a message to the future. One day humans or machines might come back. They would take this sample to Earth. This rock was waiting for that day. The rover backed away slowly. It looked at the hole it had made. Mars had been opened, just a little but enough. The ground around looked calm, but Mars was never truly calm. The rover's sensors detected something new. The soil nearby was softer, too soft. If Perseverance drove into it, its wheels could sink. Mars traps were silent and deadly. The rover stopped again. It scanned the area, compared data, calculated risk. On Earth, scientists noticed the warning signs. They changed the plan. Perseverance turned slightly, chose a safer path. This was intelligence, not human, but close. The rover moved forward again. Every meter mattered, every decision mattered. As Perseverance continued, the sun began to lower. Shadows stretched across the crater. Mars was preparing for another night. The rover stopped and looked back. Behind it were tracks, drill marks, a sealed sample, proof of progress. But ahead was still unknown. More rocks, more dust, more danger, and deeper secrets. Perseverance did not rush. It never did. It moved with patience, with purpose. Because it was not just exploring Mars. It was reading a story written billions of years ago. A story hidden in stone. And this was only the first page. Perseverance moved slowly. Not because it was weak, but because Mars demanded respect. The land ahead looked calm, but calm on Mars was never safe. The rover's cameras scanned the area again. This place looked different from before. The rocks were smooth, rounded, not sharp, not broken. This was strange. On Earth, scientists noticed it immediately. Rounded rocks did not form easily on Mars. They had seen shapes like this before. On Earth, water shapes rocks slowly, patiently. Could this mean something? Perseverance stopped near a group of stones. They were lying close together like they had been placed by hand, but no hands had ever been here. The rover lowered its camera, took close pictures. Tiny lines appeared on the rocks, patterns, not random. Mars was speaking, but not in words. Long ago, water had moved here, flowed, washed over these stones again and again. These rocks were witnesses. Witnesses to a time when Mars was not dead. Perseverance sent the images back to Earth. The signal traveled through space, slow, steady. When the pictures arrived, the room changed. Scientists leaned forward, some pointed at the screen, others stayed silent. This was important. If water stayed here for a long time, then life could have survived here too, maybe very small life, simple life, but life. Perseverance did not know this. It only followed its mission. The rover used another tool, a laser. The laser fired at the rock. A tiny spark appeared. The rock's surface turned to dust. The rover analyzed the dust, elements, chemicals. The data showed signs of minerals formed by water. Mars was not always dry. Mars was not always silent. The rover stayed still for a moment, as if listening. The wind passed gently. Dust moved slowly across the ground. Mars felt ancient, older than Earth in many ways. Perseverance rolled forward a little more, just a few meters. Then it stopped again. The ground color changed, from red to brown. This was rare. The rover took more images, more tests. The soil here was different. It had been protected from strong radiation for a long time. This was good. Radiation destroys signs of life. Protection means preservation. On Earth, excitement grew, but no one celebrated loudly. Mars had fooled people before. Still, this was a strong. Perseverance prepared another sample tube, clean, empty. The drill moved again, this time deeper. The rock was harder. The drill worked longer. Dust covered the rover's arm. Mars dust was everywhere, sticky, fine. Finally, the drill stopped. Another sample was collected. Another piece of Mars history was sealed. Perseverance placed the tube safely inside. 2 samples now, 2 messages from the past. The sun was lowering again. Shadows returned. Night was coming. The rover needed to rest. Before stopping, Perseverance turned its camera toward the horizon. The land looked endless, quiet, cold, but not empty. Mars had a story, and Perseverance was slowly learning how to read it. On Earth, scientists looked at the last image of the day. No movement, no life, yet something had changed. Mars no longer felt like just a dead planet. It felt like a place that had lived. Perseverance shut down some systems, saved energy. Another night on Mars was beginning. But now the mission felt different. This was no longer just exploration, this was discovery, and the next steps would be even more dangerous, because the rover was heading toward an area never explored before, a place where the past of Mars might be hidden even deeper. Waiting Mars changed its mood. The morning began quietly, but something was wrong. Perseverance felt it first. The air pressure shifted slightly. The wind speed increased. Dust began to rise from the ground. Mars was waking up. The rover stopped moving. This was not fear, this was caution. Mars dust storms were dangerous, not because of strong wind, but because of dust. Dust could block cameras, dust could cover sensors, dust could slowly weaken the rover. On Earth, scientists saw the data change. Wind numbers climbed, visibility dropped. They knew this pattern. A storm was coming. Perseverance did not wait for orders. It followed safety rules built deep inside its system. The rover turned its body slightly, protecting its most sensitive parts. The sky began to darken, not with clouds but with dust. Red dust filled the air like smoke. The sun became weak and blurry. Mars looked angry now. The wind pushed dust against the rover's body. Tiny particles hit metal again and again. Perseverance stayed still. Moving now would be risky. The rover lowered power use. It closed some instruments. It protected its camera. This was survival mode. On Earth, the control room was tense again, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet focus. They had seen storms before, but every storm was different. Mars storms could last hours, sometimes days. If this storm grew stronger, the mission could slow down for a long time. Perseverance waited. Time passed slowly. Dust covered the ground. Tracks disappeared. The land looked new again. Mars erased signs of human presence, as if saying, "This is still my world." Inside the rover, systems stayed stable. Power was enough. Temperature was controlled. Perseverance was built for this. Finally, the wind began to weaken. Dust slowly fell back to the surface. The sky became clearer. Light returned. The storm was over. Perseverance waited a little longer, just to be safe. Then slowly it woke its systems fully again. Cameras opened. The view had changed. The ground looked smoother. Some rocks were half covered. New shapes appeared. The storm had revealed new areas. Mars had fought back but also showed something new. Perseverance scanned the fresh surface. The dust layer was thin. Below it, older soil was visible. This soil had been hidden for a very long time. On Earth, scientists noticed it immediately. Fresh exposure meant fresh opportunity. The rover moved forward carefully, very slowly. Its wheels left new tracks. Tracks that might disappear again one day. But for now, they were proof. Proof that Perseverance was still working, still learning, still surviving. The rover stopped near a small rise in the ground. From here it could see far ahead. The next area looked different. More rocks, layered rocks. Layers meant time. Each layer was like a page in Mars' history. Perseverance had reached an important place. A place scientists had waited years to see. The storm had delayed the mission, but it had not stopped it. Mars had tested Perseverance, and Perseverance had passed. As the sun began to lower again, the rover prepared to rest, but something was clear now. The mission was entering its final and most meaningful phase. Ahead was the deepest story Mars had to tell, and Perseverance was ready to listen. To be continued, Perseverance stopped on a high point. From here it could see far across Mars, rocks, dust, silence. This was not the end of the journey, but it felt like a pause, a deep breath. The rover had traveled millions of miles. It had survived fire, speed, cold, and storms. It had touched a world no human had ever touched. Now it stood as a witness. The samples it carried were small, very small, but their meaning was huge. Inside those sealed tubes was Mars' past, dust that once touched water, rock shaped by rivers long gone. These samples were not for today, they were for tomorrow. One day machines would return here. They would collect these tubes, they would send them back to Earth, and humans would open them with shaking hands. Perseverance looked toward the horizon again. The sun was low, the sky was quiet. Mars nights were still cold, still dangerous, but Perseverance had learned how to survive. On Earth, scientists talked about the future, not just about this rover, but about humans. Could humans live on Mars one day? Could they walk where Perseverance rolled? The rover was helping answer that question. It measured radiation, weather, soil strength. Every day it sent knowledge home, not fast, not loud, but steady. Perseverance did not rush. It never had. That was its power. It was built to keep going, even when things were slow, even when Mars pushed back. That was why it was named Perseverance. The rover turned its camera one last time for the day. It took a wide image. A lonely machine on a vast planet, but it was not really alone. Behind it were thousands of people on Earth, engineers, scientists, dreamers, people who believed that exploring the unknown mattered. The rover shut down some systems. Night was coming again. Stars appeared in the sky, the same stars seen from Earth. In that moment, Mars and Earth felt closer, connected. Perseverance rested, but its mission was far from over. Days would turn into months, months into years. More discoveries would come, more risks, more stories, but one thing was already clear. Perseverance had changed how humans looked at Mars, not as a dead planet, but as a world with a past, a world with secrets, a world that might one day welcome human footsteps. And when that day comes, when the first human stands on Mars and looks around, they will not be alone, because Perseverance was there first, waiting, watching, proving that even in the cold silence of space, human courage can travel far, very far. The end.